Hi, this is Chris Monk, owner of Highline Guitars, and you're watching episode 31 of From the Luthier's Workbench. Now, in episodes 29 and 30, I covered parts 1 and 2 of my Apollyon 7-string multiscale guitar build. In part 1, I did most of the cutting and carving of the body, the neck, and the fretboard. In part 2, I finished those parts by doing all the sanding, and then I applied my custom tung oil finish. In this episode, part 3, which is the final part in this series, I'm going to do the final assembly followed by the setup. And then I'll finish this episode by showing you some photos of the finished guitar. So stay tuned and let's get started. The assembly phase of building this guitar starts with installing the frets, and of course that means I have to radius the fret wire in order to match the radius of the fretboard. After radiusing a long strip of fret wire, I cut each fret to the exact length that it needs to be. Since the fret slots on my fretboard stop short of the sides, I like to grind off part of the tang on each end. I prefer to press in the frets rather than to hammer them in place. Next, I used an angled file to bevel the edges of the frets. With the frets installed and beveled, it was time to level them. The process of leveling the frets puts a flat top on them, so I have to go back in and crown them over. So I'll use a 3-corner file followed by a diamond crowning file to make everything rounded and smooth. And then I like to use a fret rocker just to double check my work. At this stage, there's usually a burr at the ends of the fret wire, so what I need to do is take a very small file and clean up that burr. The frets are now level, crowned, dressed, and polished. Next up, I shielded the control cavity and then wired all the pots and switches. The custom-made humbuckers are installed using wood screws and springs so I can adjust their height. In most cases, a multi-scale guitar requires that you use a separate bridge for each string. In this case, I'll be using the hip shot solo bridges, which are really high quality components. The next task was to bolt in the neck. And after all that work, it's finally starting to look like a finished guitar. Before I forget, I went ahead and installed the Schaller strap locks. I usually drill the tuner holes slightly undersized and then ream them out so that they fit nice and snug. And here are those tuners installed into place. Of course, the guitar can't work without a nut, so I had to fashion a nut out of cowbone. The blank I made was very carefully sanded down to its final dimension. And once I had a perfect fit, it was time to position the strings so that I could start cutting the slots. I use a razor saw just to nick the top of the nut so that I can place the strings into position. I have to make sure that they cross the pull pieces perfectly. Then I set the string action at the 12th fret by adjusting the height of the bridge saddles. To finish the string slots, I used gauged nut slotting files. And finally, the last bit of fabrication I did was to make a truss rod cover. After tuning the strings and setting the intonation, the guitar was ready to show off. I love how this walnut looks on the top. From every angle, this guitar looks beautiful. Even the truss rod cover looks cool on this guitar. And check out the access to those upper frets. A 16-inch radius makes for easy playability. And of course, blind fret slots mean no fret tanks sticking out of the sides of the fretboard. Those hip shot solo bridges are made from really high quality materials, which means excellent tone and sustain. Even the back of this guitar looks really nice. There's just something nice about how walnut, mahogany, and maple go together. And that neck is flamed hard maple, not soft maple. And Gato tuners will ensure perfect tuning stability. I hope you enjoyed watching me build this guitar as much as I enjoyed building it. And of course, there'll be more down the road.